My name is Winston Thompson. Presently I'm the Ambassador of Fiji based in Washington, D.C. And I am the Fiji Ambassador to the United States, also the High Commission to Canada and the Ambassador to Mexico. The work of an ambassador is to represent the country and to be a reference point for citizens of Fiji who have difficulties. If they have difficulties, we need assistance with passports. We also have assistance to our trade people so that we facilitate trade relations between Fiji and the countries I represented in, and to encourage trade in both directions, and also to be the conduit for any communication there is between our governments. So that's what I do at present. Now, I was born in Fiji, in fact, on one of the outer islands, because my mother was from the Asawa group in the western part of Fiji, in one of the very small islands. And I spent my early years in Fiji, in the village where my grandfather, my father's mother, had established his family, because he had moved out of the main village, a village called Nesisili on the island of Nadula, and moved to an island next door called Nanuia Sewa, where he then established his family. And it was only his family who were there. And that's the family unit in which I grew up. My father was from New Zealand, and when I was about 7 or 8 years old, he took me away from that village setting and began to send me to school for education. And I went to school in Lautoka first, in primary school, and then went to Suva to secondary school, and then went to Trinidad and Tobago to do an agricultural degree program, and spent 4 years there. Then went back to Fiji, joined the Department of Agriculture, started a family, then went back to Australia for further postgraduate training, and worked in agriculture for some 16 years. And then I was moved around in the government service, first out of agriculture into Ministry of Finance, then into the Public Service Commission. Then I was sent overseas in 1985 to New York to be the ambassador to the United Nations. I was there for 6 years until 91. Then I went back to Fiji and was in the Ministry of Tourism, Civil Aviation and Energy. Then got moved again to the Public Service Commission, from which I then retired in 1995. And almost immediately took up a job which was advertised by the telecommunications business. And so I was there for about 10 years as a CEO, then retired. And then about three years after retirement, the government offered me a contract to go to Washington, and I've been there now 4 years as ambassador. So I have 2 more years to go, and then I go back to Fiji. So just going back to my mother's family, I'm told from word of mouth, because in the Fijian system there wasn't a means of recording your history except passed down by word of mouth. But I'm told that in about 17, in the early 1700s, this was before the Europeans came into Fiji, my ancestors, my mother's people, left the main island of Viti Levu from Raki actually, and went out to the Asawa Islands, which they tell me at that time were vacant. There weren't anybody there. And so they then established, and then, of course, many generations later, I came along. But those people still have relationships with the mainland, which they recognize for in terms of where your links are. And so they recognize these as, they have a closer bond and feeling of being part of that group rather than any other group in Fiji. Although I'm told that we are also related back then to some of the groups, related groups that moved to other parts of Fiji, to the people of Kandavu. So we call the people of Kandavu Tauvus. That means we have the same ancestral god sort of thing. And also the people along the coast down to Nandronga, the whole of the western coast. So that's what I know of my background. Of course, I'm Fijian in the sense that I was born there, but I'm of mixed ancestry. So in the colonial period, it was the government policy to keep people in different compartments. And so when we got independence in 1970, the constitution that we had, it wasn't entirely of the doing of the British colonialists, but the people of Fiji, particularly the Fijians, preferred it also, that we have separate communal constituencies for purposes of electing people to parliament, our representatives. And so that has perpetuated a sense of being separate among the different communities. There's the Indian community, the Fijian community, and then the others, in which I sort of fell, because that included everybody else. And I think that separateness is what gave rise to the sense of disaffection, I suppose, when the elections that took place, firstly, we had a number of elections in 1970, but in 1987 we had an election that had an Indian-dominated party winning. And so the Fijians in particular felt that this was not right. And so it began the first of a series of coups, the last of which was in 2006. And so the government, which came out of the 2006 coup, has been trying to get rid of those elements in our constitution, for instance, that maintain this separation. And so they did away with all the racial titles, the communal constituencies, so that everybody's equal. And they also decided that everybody in Fiji should be called a Fijian. It shouldn't be just reserved for one group of people. And so that's an effort at trying to change the future in a direction that will create more sense of unity than we have had in the past. So I think being now regarded as a Fijian like everybody else, I think is a good start. So hopefully we can keep that way and build a better Fiji than we've tended to find ourselves in the past.